나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 Check the gate. Sound, rolling, and action. Never realized how Buddhist that was. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Thank you ahead of time for liking, subscribing. Please do that. It really helps reach more audience on YouTube. Introduce this amazing practice of Shakyamuni and the self-enlightenment of the Lotus Sutra, specifically through our elucidation and our mentor, our great teacher, Nichiren. We are still, although we're approaching the end of this great writing of Nichiren's, this book that he wrote, at a point in his today, I guess we'd call it a career, but it was his life's work. Not only to be a Buddhist monk, but to be a monk of tremendous scholarship, seeking amongst thousands of years of rhetorical games and gamesmanship of power struggles and so forth, over and over and over again during the history of the transmission of the teachings into many languages, cultures, countries. There was always this exigent scholarship, I don't know any better word to put to it, since Shakyamuni was teaching, he himself exhorted his students to seek the truth and the meaning within the words. Shakyamuni didn't write anything down, right? Everything was oral in a very, in Prakrit, which was a very non-elitist language that was quite universal. And the point of Buddhism is to live this life well. It's that simple. To live this life well, the assumption, the presumption of living this life well, was that one had to figure out how not to be anxious and stressful about everything. And, the very plain as day component of the causal component, if you will, of that very same stress and anxiety that accompanies everything in life, everything for a sentient mind anyway. A rock doesn't worry about this, a tree doesn't worry about this, but a sentient mind that observes certainly worries about what it owns, what it accrues, what it might lose. Always. That's the dynamic of everything from a computer program to a relationship to siblings to everything. And the brilliant moment is the moment when you realize that everything in the universe, from the moment time began, has been this amazing process of energy taking form, expressing its potential, the forms themselves being potentials, and that we're no different. We're the same as the whole universe, except that we can perceive it. So, in a simplistic ways, one of two ways you can go. By perceiving it, you can run around like a greedy child trying to own all of it. And at some point, find somebody else who's trying to own all of it and take it away from them. And here goes the human drama, right? Manipulation. I have more than you do. I'm better than you are. Oh, I've lost this. I can't recover. I can't live without it. Right? You can go that route of attachment. Or you can go to the other route that says, my goodness, this is amazing. Look at all the stuff manifesting in all these different ways. And it's just, like bubbles in a bubble bath. Some of the bubbles last for a while before they pop and go away. Reintegrate into the whole of energy. This is where people get stuck, though. They want to hang on to the self. Oh, my bubble will go beyond my death. No, the death of a bubble is the death of a bubble. There's no more bubble. Stop being so obsessed about ownership. Just be in it. You're not owned, and you don't own. You're simply part of an amazing manifestation of energies. Wow. You got to make that mental shift. But it's incredibly hard. Even if we have moments of it, to hang on to that is incredibly difficult. So the Lotus Sutra shows us with a very easy method to invoke that enlightenment, to invoke that knowing, to experience it. And it's awesome when we do it and we sense that shift of perspective and experience. It's mind-boggling. But as soon as we stop, really, it affects us, but it slips away as we, feed this body, hold on to our environs, and we slip right back into our humanity. But the more that we do it, the less attached we become. Sometimes imperceptibly, sometimes big aha moments. Wow, that's not in my life anymore, and I don't miss it. Or, wow, what's all this new opportunity? This is amazing. This is what happens as we train our minds to be more and more aware and therefore integrate our Buddha nature into our daily lives. You may be hearing noise. It's raining here in Mississippi, as it often does. So that'll be our background hum, our chanting of the raindrops as we do this video today. All right, once again, thank you for being here. The 3 great vows is what we're going to... Oh, no, we read that at the termination of yesterday's video. So we're now on chapter 16. In order to attain Buddhahood, one must compensate for one's errors or transgressions. Really? My apologies. Excuse me. Oh my. It's raining. My sinuses are acting up. My little dog Chloe's at my feet, on my feet actually. She gets scared with the thunder and the rain. So, I'm not sure what to think of these dialogues, both from Shakyamuni, other translations, and Nichiren's. I think Nichiren is addressing this aspect of Shakyamuni's teachings because he knows he has to. I think, see, again, this is a difficulty of translation. So much of the world, for so many thousands of years, has been wrapped with mysticism, right? Everything from having a successful hunt to feed our tribe means that we have to appease some kind of universal forces and give them offerings so that we can in turn have the benefit of eating. All that mystical crap. It's been around and it's still around. Although these days, I have to say, if you're a keen observer, you'll notice that all that religious mysticism has really turned into the stuff of politics. I talk about that all the time, even in Buddhism. But I mean the mysticism, the ability with magical thinking to seize upon ideas that are based completely on imagination and rhetoric and I'm better than you and those are bad and we're good and all that mythology, which has been quite the domain of religion for thousands of years, which in my opinion, root of war. Just ask any Christian soldier. Why are you a soldier? Anyway, sorry, I digress. But all of that mysticism that's always been on the left hand of elites and governance who want to control and manipulate, there's very little differentiation. They're one and the same now. Anyway, I bring all that up. Sorry, not to bore you and bring it up again, but when I'm reading this translation about compensating for one's, as this translation says, sins, where'd that come from? Right? Strictly speaking, in Buddhist rhetoric, there's no such thing as a sin. There are grave errors. See, that's earthbound. That's actual responsible rhetoric, right? Killing your parent isn't a sin. It's a grave transgression, and there will be repercussions from it. Oh, that makes sense. That's reasonable. That's rational. But what is a sin? A sin implies you're offending what? You know, I've talked about this idea of offense many times. People take offense. People offer offense. But you don't have to take it. Apologies. Right? Offense is a weird thing. If you feel offended, well, that's on you. Words are just words. They're people expressing their problems, issues, whatever. For someone else, upon hearing words or gestures or whatever, to then take it and go, well, I'm offended. Well, you did that on your own. Don't tell me somebody holding up an indiscriminate finger has suddenly set you off to go to war. What? It's a finger. Come on. Why do I give you these examples? Because Buddhism is about reason, rationality, reason. What is actually true? The word sin implies that you're offending some kind of other power. That's ridiculous. Once again, it's inculcated in the language. We make transgressions. What do we transgress? Our best behavior, our most life-affirming behavior. When we act in a silly, stupid, greedy, manipulative way, we are crapping all over our best behavior, our best life, our best experience. And if you understand anything about cause and effect, if I put my hand in a flame, what sin am I committing? I'm going to get the effect, but I made the cause, and I'm going to suffer the effect. Or I'm going to experience great joy from a different kind of a cause. Isn't that a better cause than sticking my hand in a fire? Pretty sure I'm going to quell that habit pretty quickly. So this idea that we have to compensate for our sins, that's not Buddhism. That's freaking religion. It's ridiculous. In order to attain Buddhahood, one must compensate for one's transgressions. Here's what I'll say. The attempt at translation here is really a simple formula. If you want to attain Buddhahood, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, you must modify your behavior of attachments and non-life affirming behaviors. Now I'm having to speak louder because it's raining harder. Hopefully you're able to deal with that. So in that vein, let's read this chapter, understanding that as Buddhists, as we course through our daily lives, samsaric beings, right, with a mind, sentient of what we're doing and what others are doing, that we have some habits that aren't altogether positive, or at least affirming of our greater natures, our Buddha-ness. We do things, they don't have to be super bad, super life unaffirming. They might just be little habits, some we're not even conscious of. And so in order to experience and stay in Buddhahood all the time, coursing through life as bodhisattvas in the rhetoric of Buddhism, then we have to mollify, quell, influence, shift our behavior toward our better natures. It's not about sinning. It's about better behavior, right? Go back to the initial Four Noble Truths. What's the fourth? Right? Follow the Eightfold Noble Path. Behave better. So that's all this is talking about. You have bad habits. Those bad habits in Buddhism are habits that are not life-affirming. They're transgressions on your Buddha-ness. And you need to move past them. You need to address them. You need to quell them. You need to eschew them. How do we do that? The cleanest method to do that is to continually manifest our Buddha nature. So Nichiren is going to address this line of conversation in the teachings because at some points, at many points, when Buddha was teaching people who weren't ready to accept a higher mind, a Buddha-ness, and you're still admired in the mysticism and religions of the day, he often resorted to using examples from those minds, from those habits, from those cultures, right? In order to slowly lead them to realizations until finally you could say, okay, now just instantiate this thing I've been teaching you about, this Buddha-ness. But because there's a lot of rhetoric in the teachings about this, Nichiren is addressing it. That's what this chapter is about. So he starts out, some might wonder, how do you know that your banishment and death sentence are results of transgressions in your past life? Right? Because Nichiren has put this out there as an exemplar of his own life, saying to people, you know, first of all, I'm getting threatened with my life, banished from the country, sternly reprimanded by the elites, because I have the balls or the chutzpah or whatever, the courage to call out the truth. And they don't like the truth because it strips them of their power over you. It strips them of their authority. And they don't like that. But also, Nichiren is going to use that very situation, which in and of itself is all we need to know. But he's still dealing in Japan in the medieval times with people who are surrounded with mysticism, even through Buddhism. Supposedly, these other schools calling themselves Buddhists, you know, with the mudras and mantras and the magic words, they're crapping all over Buddhism with their religious insistence on mysticism. And the people, in a way, they're not much evolved from 3,000 years ago when Shakyamuni was trying to teach them. I don't know what it is about human beings, but we love our magic. One theory would say we love our magic because it absolves us of responsibility. To be truly responsible for your actions. It shouldn't, but it really requires a lot of us. It requires a courageous life. It requires you to say, yeah, I screwed up. Knowing that you can move on. But the problem is that most people use that as a manipulation against us, which is what makes this so powerful. Because as courageous as you might be to say, yeah, I screwed up, let's move on, I won't do that again. This should be all that's required. But there's a shitload of voices out there who say, you messed up, you gotta pay. Yeah, they can take out all their fears and frustrations about being imperfect, and they can lump it on you and punish you and throw the key away. And, well, that means now you have a very easily manipulated populace because they're all scared to death that somebody's going to see them do something wrong. Right? What Michel Foucault would call the surveillance state. You're watching your own shadow in case it reports you. So you have everyone scared to death. worried that everything they do might be wrong or perceived as wrong. Ooh, how powerful is that? Boy, it sounds a lot like today, doesn't it? Moving on. So Nichiren is dealing with this, and he's talking to people. And let's face it, it's samurai times. You don't get a court date and a plea deal, and if you have enough money, get somebody to defend you, or what, that whole mechanism until you go into probation or whatever, some kind of punishment, right? No, back then, a very sharp blade just went through your neck and you were dead. Judgment was rather swift, and appeals were not heard. So talk about living in fear, yeah? So Nichiren, in a way, has to satiate his followers, his students, and say, okay, it's obvious I'm being banished and threatened and all this stuff because I'm saying uncomfortable truths. But he's going to make it a teaching moment. He's going to say, I was a young boy. I made mistakes growing up. In a way, I'm exorcising from myself bad habits. And some of these challenges are helping me to expiate those bad habits. Because, number one, because they're keeping me super focused on the prize here, enlightenment. So I don't have time, the lazy time, to do stupid things. So I'm expiating them. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of need for this exposition. So I'm telling you, Nichiren is doing it because he's addressing an aspect of Buddhist teachings and the culture that he wants to inculcate into the teaching. I'm not sure it's so necessary, like today, for us to do this, but I'm sure some of us, because I live in Mississippi, I live in the Bible Belt, and what that really means is a crap load of mysticism and magical thinking. So it still exists today, so maybe there's some benefit to this exposition. I just want to put it in context for you, okay? So he's answering a possible question that he's heard. It's how can you be so sure that a lot of this violence and derision that's being heaped on you is a mechanism for you to expiate your own bad habits? How can you say that, right? So he says, to them I would answer that copper mirrors reflect only colors and shapes, and the mirror the first emperor of Qin used to test his subjects showed only their present transgressions. But the mirror of Buddhism shows one's virtues or vices from the past. So, you see what he's doing? He's talking about karma. He's talking about that momentum of collective energies of tendencies and conditions that manifest moment to moment as this container of life, Sylvain, or your, whatever, insert your name here, right, has, certainly the whole thing is magnificent, that it forms a consciousness, 9 consciousnesses, to be accurate, including Buddhahood, the awareness of the entirety of the process. That's amazing. But within that karma, there are tendencies of, well, doubt, tendencies of fear, of agglomerate collecting. Well, I mean, that's the very basis for life, isn't it? Yeah. That's why Buddhism talks a lot about desires, right? And when you have desires, can greed be far behind? What is greed, after all? Just desire of desire. More. More, please. Right? I mean, that's our fundamental building block. If it were not for attachment and the desire for manifestation of potentials, there would be no life. Those are not conscious things. They're just tendencies and conditions of the energy formation. Once there's form, well, the form reflects the formation, there's karma. This is energy with actions, specific parameters, tendencies, and conditions. Multiply that with endless zeros, and you have a human being, which has this emergent consciousness of self-observation. Once you observe, then you can see desire. When you're in it, you don't see it. You're just performing, moment to moment, manifesting. That's all you're doing, from formation to form. The judging, the witnessing, the observation comes from mind. Now, with this mind, one can observe and influence the tendencies and conditions. Yeah? That's what this is all about. So the virtues and vices from the past, they're the tendencies and conditions of which you're witnessing your own manifestation. And a lot of it, like my heart beating regularly, my lungs converting oxygen into molecules for my blood to circulate, all that stuff, that's good stuff. That, yeah, keep doing that. But when my mind goes certain ways to satiate certain cravings in the body, and my mind creates some kind of, whether it's mysticism or gratification, gain, right? It's very rudimentary. Think lizard brain here. Some of those tendencies actually end up manifesting more, you might say, high-level processes in the mind that are then based on questionable tendencies and conditions. And as I enlighten myself, I want to modify those. I want to either, well, you can't just eschew them, but you can influence them, convert them into things that are life-affirming. Right? A lot of things like that are in life, where if we just modify the habit, we end up doing wonderfully life-affirming things rather than creating stress or fear or so on and so forth. Therefore, it is said in the Sixth Facile Nirvana Sutra, good men, since you have committed numerous negative actions, or what it says here, evil deeds, but they're non-life affirming actions, and accumulated bad karma, there it is, right? You have to suffer in compensation for them. Really? Again, you have to reinvestigate what they mean by suffer. Why do you have to suffer to compensate for them? What that's really saying, let me clear up this translation for you, is that by your own life unaffirming actions, you are suffering. You are creating anxiety for yourself. You're creating fear. Look, if you're somebody who, what's the word? You're a kleptomaniac. Or you're consciously, doing little petty thefts. Every time you go to the store, well, I'll get 2 extra of these and I won't pay for them. And you think you get away with it. But there's a balance sheet in energy, in life. And, even if it's just your constant remembering that you think you got away with something, but you're afraid you might get caught, well, isn't that stress and anxiety? Well, that's what you get for that bad habit energy. You're suffering. You see? Now, that's a mild example, but you can take it from there, right? What's the saying we always, you got to live with yourself. Yeah, you do. So best that you be your best self, because living with that, far more enjoyable, right? Buddhism is not complicated. You may be slighted, you may look ugly, you may suffer from a lack of clothing or from insufficient food, unable to make a fortune, born to a poor family or to a heretic family, or suffer from royal persecutions and many other difficulties. Well, there it is. There's the equation. If you do life unaffirming things, negative things, things that you may be acutely aware of or not so much aware of, but they're bad habits, you're stepping on your own wonder. You're going to live with a precipitated condition from that. And it may not be a straight line, not in your mind anyway, right? Because your mind has a clever way of saying, why me, for every situation that happens to you. But what Buddhism is doing is connecting the dots. It's not why me, it's how me, because you're the one driving. You're the one making this life happen. And if there's things in this life that you don't like or that you feel a victim of, you only need to look at, and here's the analogy of the mirror again. Your environment is you. Your environment is your mirror. If you don't like what you're experiencing, then you have to find deep within yourself how it is that you're manifesting it. Because there is no other way for it to manifest. All of it is occurring in your mind, and your mind is conditioned by your behavior. Simple. The reason you receive relatively light punishments like these in the world is due to your merit of upholding the Dharma. Otherwise, you might have been punished much more severely, end quote. So that's, in respect to our Buddhist practice, a very key idea to keep in mind. You may not know the complexities of your karma, right? We generally don't. Some things are obvious, but in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot going on that we're not all that aware of or want to be. But when we chant, when we're constantly training our mind to see the world from our best self, from our best perspective, from life at its most wonderful expression, whatever your situation in life, there's always the best expression, yes? And when you do that, those negative habits, whether you're conscious of them or not, they're being modified. They're being influenced. And though you may go through troubles, you can be certain, and this is the teaching of Hendoku Yaku, the teaching of lessening one's karmic retribution, all of that. It's about keeping your best self driving the boat, your life, so that when you do change deeply ingrained karmic energies that are less than life affirming, that you may not even be aware of, that you've inculcated over millennia through the ancestries of your lineage, that when the conversion of that karma manifests itself, right? When you finally spit out that bad stuff, pop the pimple, that it will be more easily manageable for you. That, first of all, you'll be conscious of it. Wow, I'm changing karma, obviously. I'm going through a rough patch right now. I've been sick for 2 weeks. I feel like hell. I must be changing some karma, right? When you understand your freight train of energy, right, and it's being stressed, you can be sure, if you're practicing Buddhism, that whatever your pains are, your suffering is, it pales in comparison to what the consequence would otherwise have been if ever you encountered it to change that karma, had you not been working on your Buddha-ness. That's very important, right? It's a reminder not to begrudge your difficulties, because if you're focused and resolved on your Buddha-ness, whatever difficulties you're experiencing are an actual expression of change, of unloading negative energy in a much milder fashion than would otherwise have been. If at all, because if you didn't practice Buddhism, that negative karma could have followed you all the way to the grave. Oh, what a happy life. I didn't have to go through any, well, you might die 40 years early. And this is where Buddhists start to talk about extending life. Because by the very nature of resolve toward Buddha-ness, we are expiating deep tendencies and conditions that might have very grandiose, even fatal expression, and we minimize them, and maybe we get in a car accident, maybe we get a difficult disease or illness, but we come through it because karmically we've made huge influences and changes in that freight train of karma that we all are. Yeah? That's what this is about. This matches me, Nichiren, as perfectly as two halves of a tally. It explains why I have been persecuted, and thus all my numerous doubts have faded away. All of his numerous doubts have faded away because he's noticed. See, several things are happening here. I said it earlier. Doubts come from what? Negative energies. So when you're confronted with a trauma, your mind stops being petty and starts looking for very profound essentials that validate what? Our Buddha-ness, our beauty, our love. And when that happens, you're not doubting anything. You're just in awe, quite appreciative, generally. You see? Let us tally this sutra phrase by phrase against me. As for being slighted, which is phrased in the Lotus Sutra, a parable chapter, as being slighted, despised, hated with jealousy, quote unquote, well, I, Nichiren, have been despised for more than 20 years. Okay, but this is interesting. You see how he slipped from his personal struggles with doubt to now his struggles because the emperor's naked, because he's pointing out the truth. And this is happening to him from others in power. See, he slides back and forth, right? Being ugly looking, quote unquote, and suffering from lack of food and clothing, unable to make a fortune, being born to a poor family, suffering from royal persecutions, and so on, are all about me. Well, they weren't written for him. Who can doubt it? Well, yeah, you can bear witness to this, the words of the sutra. Here they are being actualized by little old me, Nichiren. He's offering himself, his life up as an example of how sometimes when you are the one sticking his head out, being counted as the votary of the Lotus Sutra, as practicing as diligently as possible with great conviction, Buddha-ness, well, sometimes your environment will respond with a lot of obstacles. And yet, he's writing a book about it. People are feeding him. He's getting clothing. He's always appreciative for those things, right? We've read that over and over and over again. He's being supported. So for all of the shitstorm that keeps coming his way, he's not dead. He hasn't been killed. Yeah, he's had to endure some suffering, but he's alive, and he continues to work on the propagation of Shakyamuni's Lotus Sutra, Buddha-ness. Even you could count as his suffering, his witnessing of his students being maligned in his stead. I mean, that's got to be a blow, right? Maybe I should shut up. I don't want to hurt anyone. But he's not. It's not him that's hurting them. He's being used as the excuse for hurting them. All the more reason to fight the powers that be. That's a very courageous stance. One that's not common, especially these days, yeah? It's stated in the chapter of the Lotus Sutra, encouragement for keeping the sutra. I guess he knew. That such men will be exiled many times. And this is restated in this Atsunayon Gyo, as such men will, quote, have many difficulties. It also says, due to your merit of upholding the Dharma, you will receive relatively light punishment in this world. So the consequences, they'll be there, but they'll be greatly lightened because of your commitment. And this is explained in the Mahochikwan, the Great Concentration and Insight of Tendai, Facile 5, as follows, quote, the merit of trivial acts of practicing Buddhism without tranquility of mind and meditation on truth is not strong enough to bring out our past transgressions, hidden deeply within the self, right? Only when we practice tranquility of mind and meditation on truth, under any circumstances, great conviction, can we bring our past transgressions out to the surface for modification, for expiation, yeah? It also warns us, quote, we will then be confronted at once by the three hindrances and the four devils, right? Darakuten Mao, all the obstacles, all of that. This is just the pimple being popped, right? Wipe away the pus and you have brilliant skin again. Not trying to be insensitive to those with acne problems. You understand the analogy, I hope. In the past, beyond memory, I must have been a wicked person and deprived those who practice the Lotus Sutra of their food, clothing, and possessions on numerous occasions, just as some people today in Japan have been destroying the Lotus temples. So this isn't an actual factual story. What Nichiren is indicating is that just like any human being, and those of you out there who may have doubts because, well, you've entertained some pretty stupid things in your life, and no matter how terrible what you think you have done has been, it is not an obstacle to your enlightenment. And that's a very important part of this chapter. Nichiren is using himself as an example and saying, some of the shit that's coming down on me in my life, I must have done some horrible crap. But he's not saying he did horrible crap. He's saying, even if you, my students, have done what you think is horrible crap, look at me. I'm the votary of the Lotus Sutra. Nothing keeping you from doing the same. So it's actually encouragement, isn't it? I must have also cut off the heads of numerous people who were practicing the Lotus Sutra. I mean, not only cutting off the heads of people, but specifically those who were trying to attain Buddhahood. That's a heinous transgression, yeah? So, in his own way, Nichiren is replicating the words of Shakyamuni in the Lotus Sutra, telling Devadatta, his worst enemy up until the Lotus Sutra, you too will attain Buddhahood. He's doing it in his own way to his own people, but he's saying the same thing. No matter how terribly you've behaved in life, if you finally make the decision to appreciate, to resolve, to have conviction in Buddha-ness, in the wonder of the manifestations moment to moment of life in this universe, even the greatest errors you've made will pale in comparison to that. You'll, quote, pay for it, but your punishment will, in a way, be a validation that you're changing that you're getting rid of that you're converting that energy into something life-affirming. That's kind of encouraging, isn't it? I may have purged myself of some of these grave errors, but not all of them. I'm not aware of all of them, right? Even if I have, there are the residuals. They're greatly lessened, but I still have bad habits. You, Nichiren? Yes, me, Nichiren. In order to attain Buddhahood, I must completely compensate for all those serious errors. In other words, I must truly change my karmic, what do I call it, freight train. I must capture every portion of my karma, my energies, and apply my influence of Buddhahood on every single aspect of me-ness. Again, this is encouragement to truly resolve and have conviction to do this practice. My merits in spreading the Lotus Sutra are still shallow, while my errors in the past are still deep. This is an allusion to the fact that as great as his efforts have been to bring about the reform to the Lotus Sutra and shut up these other sects, he still hasn't succeeded. He's influenced a great amount of people, and he's having his effect on the elites and the leadership. But still, Japan is inundated by Nembutsu and Zen and all these other things. So he doesn't see his success. It may take his success a longer period of time, even after his death, to fully be realized, right? If I had preached only provisional sutras, grave errors in my past lives would not have been revealed, right? They would just be my day-to-day existence. I wouldn't be confronting my less than Buddha-ness affirming in my day-to-day life. It is like a forging iron, for instance. Unless you hit it hard and forge it hard, hidden scars will not be seen. You know how you work, what do we call those guys, the metal workers who work at a forge? They get the steel red hot and then they pound it into shape, and that pounding makes it harder and harder and gets rid of the imperfections in the iron, right? They appear only when the iron is hit hard and many times on an anvil. Or it's analogous to squeezing hemp seeds. Unless you squeeze hard, there's very little oil. Ever since I, Nichiren, strongly condemned those who slander the true Dharma in Japan, I've been persecuted. It must be that grave errors in my past are revealed through my merits in defending the Dharma in this life. It is just as a piece of iron remains black until heated by fire and becomes red when placed in fire. Even calm water makes great waves when quickly stirred by a log. A sleeping lion roars loudly when awakened by the touch of a hand. There's an analogy cited in the Nirvana Sutra. It goes like this. A sickly poor woman did not have a house to live in, nor anyone to support her. She wandered around begging for food. While staying in an inn, she gave birth to a child. The innkeeper chased her out. Carrying the infant born only a short while ago, she tried to go to some other place. On the way, she was overtaken by a bad storm, suffered from hunger and cold, and was attacked by mosquitoes, horseflies, bees, and other poisonous insects. Coming to the Ganges River, she tried to wade through it carrying her baby. She was carried away by the flowing river, but she clung to her infant until both of them drowned. Ugh. Such a woman will be reborn in the Brahma heaven due to her merits of compassion. Manjushri. If a good man wishes to uphold the true Dharma, he must do so the same as the poor woman in sacrificing her own life in the Ganges because of her love for her child. Good man, bodhisattvas upholding the Dharma should be also ready to sacrifice their lives, so on and so forth. Such people will be able to attain Buddhahood without seeking, just as the poor woman will be reborn in the Brahma heaven without seeking it. So, again, hyperbole, but you get the example, right? Your conviction to your Buddhahood needs to be courageous, intense, and you must believe in yourself, in your Buddhahood. It's not a game we're playing. It's your very life you're altering. If you don't have that kind of conviction, then you're just playing at something, and it kind of is insulting. So get your mind right. That's why I've said in the past, sometimes I've gone to my mandala frustrated in situations of tremendous turmoil in my life, and I have screamed at that mandala, stared it down. Do this. Make this happen. I'm not saying you have to get angry at your mandala. I'm just indicating the kind of conviction, the kind of will, the kind of expectation, the kind of demand that you have of what? Of your own mind. Stop mucking about. Do this. Sometimes that's what you have to do. Sometimes it's as simple as sitting down, lighting candles and incense, looking at the mandala, being a little bit overwhelmed, and just entering it. But sometimes, life being what it is, you must be able to muster the strength of conviction that this is happening and it's happening now. With that kind of conviction, then those quieter moments still have that conviction because there's a knowing, there's a confidence. And that is key to our altering our formations, that freight train of karma, and lifting it, right? Lifting being better. Great Master Chang'an has interpreted this citation with the concepts of the three hindrances, the evil passions, evil karma, and painful retributions. You should read it. As I examine this passage, we are save that for next time. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for considering these discussions. This is our study. This is our discussion. If I've raised some thoughts here, let me know what they are. That's what the comments section is open for, right? Or email me if you're more comfortable with that. Keep your practice strong. Take care of your health. Be easy on yourself. Be kind. And I'll see you in the next one. We'll continue this reading of the opening of the eyes. Bye for now.